All right, strap in, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into Pakistan's economic landscape.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It is. We've got fresh data from Trading Economics and the World Bank, all from December 2024.
Nice. Hot off the presses.
Exactly. Think of this as like your cheat sheet to understanding what's going on with Pakistan's economy. The big picture.
Yeah, like getting a behind-the-scenes look at how their financial engine runs.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with that big picture. Pakistan's GDP.
Okay.
In 2023, it was 338.37 billion US dollars.
The number.
Huge, but it only represents, get this, about 0.32% of the global economy.
Huh. Interesting. So it kind of puts things into perspective, right?
Totally. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In 2022, Pakistan's GDP was even higher.
Oh.
Peaked at $374.79 billion, so there's been a bit of a dip.
A dip, huh?
Yeah, but forecasts predict a rebound, potentially reaching $346.49 billion by the end of 2024,
Okay.
and even higher in 2025 and 2026.
So there's reason for optimism then.
Definitely. But to really understand where that potential growth is coming from, we got to zoom in
Zoom in on what?
on the different components of Pakistan's GDP.
Ah, the different sectors that make up that big number.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense.
So let's break it down. We know the services sector is a big player. It contributes the most to Pakistan's GDP. But there's been a slight decline in other key sectors,
Like what?
like agriculture, manufacturing, and construction.
Interesting.
It's like, think of it like a sports team. Some players are star performers carrying the team,
Right.
and others have faced some, well, setbacks.
So the question is, what's causing the dip in these specific sectors?
Yeah, exactly. Could it be like internal policies, global economic trends, something totally unpredictable?
It's a bit of a mystery,
Yeah,
but we have to unpack it to understand the whole picture.
agreed. And while we're on the topic of these key players,
Yeah.
we got to acknowledge the unsung heroes. Like
Yeah.
mining and transport, they're showing steady growth.
Even though they're often overshadowed by the bigger sectors.
Right. They might not be in the spotlight, but they're essential for keeping everything running smoothly.
Yeah, good point. Every sector, big or small, plays a role.
Mm,
And understanding those individual roles gives us a much better view of how complex Pakistan's economy is.
totally. Okay, so we've got the macro view.
Mm.
Billions of dollars of GDP, different sectors contributing. But what about the individual experience?
Meaning,
How do all these numbers affect everyday people in Pakistan? Their lives, their wallets?
good question. That's where GDP per capita comes in. It measures individual wealth and living standards. In Pakistan, the nominal GDP per capita is $1,663.99 US dollars.
Okay.
But there's another number. The purchasing power parity, or PPP, it's much higher.
Yeah.
5,599.32 US dollars. This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, why is there such a big difference? And what does purchasing power really mean, like practically?
Okay, so imagine you have $100.
All right, I'm imagining it.
In the US, that might get you a certain amount of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But in Pakistan, those same $100 could get you more. Things just cost less there.
So PPP shows us how far money actually goes in different economies, not just the raw number.
Exactly. And that difference between nominal GDP and PPP, it's super important when comparing how people live in different countries. It paints a much clearer picture.
Makes sense. So we've got GDP, sectors, purchasing power. It's all starting to come together.
It is. And there's still more to explore.
So we've laid the groundwork, explored GDP growth, and we even went into purchasing power.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
Now, I want to dig into some specifics from that source material you sent over.
You want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. I think looking at the numbers will help us really understand how these different parts of the economy, are actually contributing.
I agree. The data does give some really interesting insights. Let's see. For December 2023, agriculture contributed 8,982,649.000 PKR million.
Okay.
Construction came in at 889,708.000 PKR million, and manufacturing was at $4,606,868.00.
Wow, those are some big numbers.
They are.
And it really highlights how big the services sector is.
Right.
It contributed 22,653,398.000 PKR million in the same period.
It's a powerhouse, that's for sure.
Yeah. But even though those other sectors, agriculture and manufacturing, construction, they haven't been as strong.
Right.
These numbers show they're still making a big contribution to the GDP.
Oh, absolutely. They're key players.
Yeah. But I'm curious, looking at these hard numbers, does anything about those dips in those sectors, does anything jump out at you, like a possible explanation?
Hmm. It's hard to say for sure without a deeper dive, but these numbers could point to challenges those sectors are facing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's global economic pressures, supply chain issues, or even policy changes within Pakistan.
It makes you realize that these numbers, they represent real people.
For sure.
Businesses, livelihoods, all affected by these ups and downs.
It's about people's lives at the end of the day.
Exactly. Okay, so we see mining contributing 629,555.0000000 million, and transport at 4,098,372.0000 PKR million.
Not as big, but still important.
Like we were saying earlier, they're the unsung heroes,
Quietly doing their thing.
keeping the economy moving. Their steady performance, it might actually suggest some strength in Pakistan's economy.
Could be. Maybe there's growing global demand for their resources. Or maybe there's been investment in infrastructure.
It's really interesting how even these smaller sectors, can give us clues about where the economy is headed. It makes me wonder, what else could we find if we, really zoomed in on these individual sectors?
Oh, there's always more to discover.
Yeah.
This just shows how important it is to go beyond the surface.
Right?
You have to look at those individual parts, see how they fit together, like a puzzle.
It's like detective work, almost. We're looking for clues to understand Pakistan's economy.
Exactly. And as we keep going, we'll be looking at those forces that shape it, the global events and internal factors.
Okay, sounds good. It's amazing how looking at these specific numbers, it really changes your perspective.
It does, doesn't it?
We've gone from billions of dollars in GDP to, millions of PKR for each sector.
Yeah.
It's like zooming in on a map, you suddenly see all those little details you wouldn't have noticed before.
Exactly. It's like we've been putting together this giant puzzle.
Yeah.
Started with the big picture, the GDP. Then we looked at all the pieces, the different sectors. And now we can see how they all fit together.
Right. But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't really talked about yet.
Which one?
The global context.
Ah, yes. We can't just look at Pakistan's economy on its own.
Right. It's all connected.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like a spider web.
A spider web.
Yeah, one little tremor in one part of the web, it can send vibrations throughout the whole thing.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So, events happening on the other side of the world can affect Pakistan's economy.
So, global inflation, supply chain issues, even political problems in other countries.
All of that is like a chain reaction. Something happens over there, and it triggers changes over here.
Wow. So, energy prices going up somewhere else could make it more expensive for Pakistani businesses to produce their goods.
Exactly. It affects how competitive they are globally.
And what about if there's a conflict in one of Pakistan's main trading partners?
That could disrupt their supply chains. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lead to shortages, delays.
It really shows how interconnected everything is. But it's not all about what's happening outside Pakistan.
Right. Internal factors matter too.
Like what?
Government policies, infrastructure, social trends.
So, for example, the government could do things to help certain industries grow, and that would impact the overall GDP.
Right, and things like investing in better transportation or making sure more people have access to electricity.
Those things could help businesses succeed.
Exactly. Creates a better environment for them. So for our listener, who's been following all of this,
Yeah.
the key takeaway is to look at the whole picture, see how global trends and what's happening inside Pakistan, how those things work together.
It's about seeing the connections between, those big economic numbers like GDP and what's happening in people's everyday lives.
Absolutely. It's about remembering that behind all those impressive figures,
Yeah.
all those billions of dollars, those represent real people.
Their jobs, their businesses.
Exactly. Their hard work, their struggles, their successes, that's all part of Pakistan's economic story.
And so that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
We've explored Pakistan's economy, looked at the data, and I think even told a bit of a story. But the story doesn't end here.
Yeah, it's an ongoing story.
One that's influenced by so many things, both inside and outside of Pakistan. So to our listener, keep exploring, keep learning.
Stay curious about how our world is connected. And remember that a country's economic journey is really a reflection of its people.
Keep an eye on Pakistan. It's a fascinating country with a lot of potential.
And who knows, maybe your insights will help us understand this complex and dynamic nation even better.